Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. So let's start with if did you find time to attempt some of the questions in the assignment one and assignment two, and if you have any problem, then we'll take that first. Any questions from there? If none, then we'll proceed with the agenda for today, which is the data preparation part we were discussing, and different aspects of that we were handling, and we have reached to the extent where we have identified the outliers. And then the question was how to remove the outliers. So that's the aspect that we will address today. So today we'll find out one of the ways how programmatically we can remove some of the items. And one area that we had identified was that if there are certain features which are highly correlated, then we need to remove some of them or one of them, because if there are several features which are highly correlated among each other, then it leads to the contamination of the results that we get, especially in terms of when we run regression or uh, some of the other algorithms like k nearest neighbor that we have not yet discussed. But many of the algorithms that we use for data analysis or for prediction, those things get contaminated and they don't give us a good result. One of the ways of doing that is what is called as the VIF, or variance inflation factor. So we have seen how to uh, we have got a feel of the variance, but this one will go into detail today, which includes the concept of what is called as the R square. So first we'll introduce you to some other concept in statistics, and then we will come back to calculation of VIF, and using VIF, how we can remove the data from the um, data set that we have got. So some of the concept in statistics that we have been discussing, since we are discussing the very bare minimum which is required for a data scientist to be known, and a few things which are slightly advanced in nature. But as we have discussed that you're not going to be seen as an expert in statistics, but there is an expectation that you understand certain concepts in the statistics which is very useful for data scientists. So we have discussed the concept of the uh, central tendency, the different measures of central tendency, then dispersion. And while talking about dispersion, we had seen how to compute variance, standard deviation, z-score. I hope all of you remember that, and these are a few things that you must remember. Then we had also talked about covariance and the correlation coefficient. We'd also seen the computation in the Excel sheet. Today, we'll talk about how regression is done and what are the different parameters that we use in regression, what are the different elements of regression, and um, how do we really measure whether the regression that we are doing or the computations linked to regression that we are doing, whether they are coming up well or not. So first we talk about what regression itself is. So regression is that if I have been given data about say two elements, one depends upon the other, then can we find out a relationship between the two? So for example, if we have some data about the rainfall in the country and the rice production in the country. So rainfall comes first, rice production comes later. Now, if you have been given data about the rainfall production and the rice production, rainfall and the rice production in the country over the past, say, several years, the question is that can we really find out a relationship between the rainfall and the rice production? And why we need to do that? Because we want to really make a prediction as to, given the rainfall this year, what is the likely production of rice in the following year or in the current agriculture year, so that government and different agencies, they can make the preparation for transportation, for storage, for distribution. They would also have some idea about where the prices are likely to rise or fall, and depending upon, they can make the policies around import of rice or things like that. And a few other examples has been discussed previously. So regression is all about finding out a relationship between what we are going to predict, that is called the dependent variable or the prediction variable, and what are the other data that we have based on which this prediction would be done. So even in the case of the housing data set that we had, what we want to predict is the price of the house. So price of the house is the dependent variable, or it is also denoted as Y, and the factors on which this price will depend upon, which could be how many rooms the house has, how many bedrooms the house has, uh, what is the income of the people who are living in those houses. By seeing these, we can make an estimate of what the price of a given house would be. So these items or these data elements based on which we'll make the prediction is called features. So regression is a problem where we say that based on certain features, can we make a prediction of the dependent variable or the prediction variable? Now, what you are seeing here in the graph is that if the relationship x-axis is the data point which I have of the independent variables or the variables based on which we'll make the prediction, those will be depicted on the x-axis. And y-axis is where we put the data about the dependent variable or the item that we are going to predict. Let's see this in the Excel sheet where we will actually do the computations. Let's go to computations. So here suppose we have data about the rainfall in millimeter in the country, and here it is rice production. So we will first look into this. So after seeing this, intuitively, can you see that there is a relationship here? So if you see this data set intuitively, you can see that the years in which the rainfall is higher, the rice production also tends to be higher, but not always. So for example, the rainfall is say 514 in 2 years, but
It's not exactly the same. It is in one case, in one year we got the 96 million tons of production. In the other year we got the 98 million tons of production. So there is some positive correlation, but it's not really a direct correlation that we can figure out. So in terms of regression, what we are saying is that we are trying to make a prediction of the rice production. How much is the production of rice? That is my prediction variable, and that's why we call it y, or that's also called the dependent variable. It means that the value of y, or value of rice production, is dependent upon rainfall, and that's why it's called the dependent variable. The variables which will determine how much is the value of the dependent variable, those are called the independent variable. They are normally denoted by x, and the independent variable is normally denoted by y. One of the key problems as data scientists that you will have to figure out is that given this data, can you find out what is the correlation, or what is the, how do you establish the relationship between x and y, or between the independent variable and the dependent variable? That means using the independent variable, using the x, can you make the prediction for y? And that prediction we can make only by uh, making some assumption to start with, and then we'll go into the algorithms that how it will really optimize and find out what is the most suitable and the most accurate relationship. So this relationship is described, will take the form of, if we have say one, first we'll start with one independent variable, and then we'll go into the there could be multiple independent variables. So for example, in this case, we are talking about only one independent variable, which is the rainfall. In the case of the housing data set that we have several independent variables like the total rooms, total bedrooms, the income profile of the people living, location of the house, whether they are near bay or inland, what is their latitude, longitude. So these are the data points we have given. So in that case, we have several independent variables based on which we want to make the prediction of the house. But to start with, we will see, we will take only one independent variable, which is the rainfall. Obviously, it could be several other things like how much is the area in which the sowing has been done, or what is the temperature, or how much is the, not just the rainfall in the total country, but the distribution of the rainfall. So several elements could be coming in. But to start with, we'll just take one value, which is the aggregate rainfall in the country, and with which we will try to make a prediction for what is the aggregate production of rice in the country. Fine. So this relationship that we want to find, that how the x impacts y, it is normally represented in the form of an equation where we say that y is equal to b into x plus some constant. So constant is the c. This b is called the beta, and x is the independent variable. It means that my y is some multiple of x, and that multiple could be positive, negative, some multiple of x, and there could be some constant. Okay, so by seeing this, I have given this, we can change the values of the b and c, and we will start. So first we'll forget about the constant part. So if I keep the constant at 0, and to me, if we just visually see, if it is 500, the value is around 100. So I'll try with the b value of 0.20. Let's see what happens. So if I keep this as 0.20, this is what the prediction we get. Now this doesn't really look like a very good production, because my prediction is 108, the actual rice production was 95. So in almost all the cases, my actual production is less than what we have got, except for maybe one case where we have got it more than the actual prediction. So let's then, to make our prediction more accurate, maybe visually we see that possibly we need to reduce it. So let's reduce this value of the multiplier to 0.15, and then we see that possibly it comes somewhat closer, but obviously not that much close. Okay, then you see that maybe the lowest one is here 90. So even if the rainfall goes down from 773 to 358, it means that almost half or less than half. Even then, my rice production does not really fall, because here the actual production is 102 at the highest, minimum production is 90. Even though the rainfall, there is substantial drop. And the reason could be that a lot of rice production is actually not dependent upon the rainfall. There is irrigation system and so on. So we may say that, okay, looks like that even if the rainfall goes down substantially, I will still get around 70 million tons of production anyway, and the remaining would be coming based on the rainfall. So 70 I put as a constant, which means that even if the rainfall is zero, I will get about, say, 70 million tons of production. Right now, we are just making an estimate, and then we will see that how we can find out mathematically that what this relationship is. And finding this relationship is called regression. So suppose we come to the conclusion that even if the rainfall is zero, then also my rice production would be 70 million ton. That is what the constant tells. That in this equation, when we say y is equal to bx plus c, c is the constant. It means that even if the b becomes zero, that will make the value of b into x as zero, and then the value of y will become equal to c. So the constant means that if the other features or other inputs or the other independent variables, if they are brought to zero, even then this is what the value of y would be. So in this equation, we are now saying that the minimum production will be 70 million tons. But if we put that, then our numbers are increasing, and then maybe we will come here and reduce this to 0.05. And then it comes somewhat closer to the actual production. So this column is my prediction, and this column is the actual production from the past data. So we are trying to make the prediction for the past years based on the relationship between the rainfall and the rice production. So if we keep these numbers, we see that our prediction is coming somewhat closer to it, much better than what we were doing earlier. But that's what we could do even visually, even through a visual inspection, even intuitively. But as a data scientist, we need to know that whether there is something even better. So suppose if you make it 0.04, then possibly it comes even closer. But how do we really know? These are the questions that we need to address. So many of the problems, or one of the very important class of the problem that we would be addressing, or we will be dealing with as a data scientist, is to make predictions based on certain information we have. And based on that information, we'll make the prediction for something. And that something could be very, very different. We can make a prediction about the rice production. We can make the prediction of the housing price. We can make the prediction about different parameters of health. So for example, by seeing the different levels of the protein, and one example that we had taken earlier, whether a person is likely to get a cancer or not, whether the person is healthy or not, by reading different parameters that even the doctors read, whether the person is likely to get a cardiac arrest or not, whether he is likely to develop a cancer or not. Then we can come to the meteorology, where based on the temperature, the wind speed, the wind direction, we can predict that how much would be the rainfall, or whether there would be a rainfall tomorrow, how much will be the rainfall over the year. All these things can be done. And therefore, the regression becomes very important tool in the hands of the data scientist. So regression is, in short, regression is prediction of something or prediction about something, and that prediction will be done based on certain other data points which we have. So the data points which become the input for making the prediction, those are called the independent variables, and they are normally denoted by x. So if we have more than one independent variables, we can denote them by x1, x2, x3. If we have only one, we can just denote that by x. And the item which we are trying to predict, or the data which we are trying to predict, is called the dependent variable, which is y. And the role of regression, or the purpose of regression, is to find out this relationship. And what it means is that we are actually trying to find out the value of b and value of c. So to understand it, we are starting from some intuitive parameter, but having made this visually, we can see that what is better or not. But now we will talk about the statistical measures based on which we can say that whether our prediction is good or bad. Okay, so now we will focus on. So I hope you have understood the concept of the dependent variable, independent variable, the regression equation, which takes the form of y is equal to bx plus c, and depending upon, and the purpose of regression is to find the values of the b, which is also called beta sometimes, and c, which is the constant. So if you can confirm that you have understood the outline of regression, what regression is all about, then we will proceed that how do we evaluate that whether the performance of my regression estimation is accurate or not, or is good or not. So if one of you can confirm that yes, the understanding, you have understood what regression is and there are no questions here, then I'll proceed with the measurement of the efficacy of regression, or how good our regression estimate is. Okay, so y is equal to bx plus c is what we are trying to find out, because ultimately we're trying to find out how x affects y. Okay, so the actual number would be dependent upon the independent variable, or the x value here, but it may also have some other factor which is affecting. So for example, here we are right now making an assumption that even if the rainfall goes to zero, some rice production will always be there, because there is irrigation facility or other ways to grow rice. So there is some relationship between the independent variable, which is the rainfall, and the rice production, but it's not completely dependent upon that. So there are two factors. One is that what is the impact of the rainfall, and the second is how much I would be able to produce even without the rainfall. So these are the two variables which goes into determining that how much is the rainfall would be, and we make an estimation based on this formula. This formula becomes my estimator. And how shall we do that? That suppose next year we come to know that our rice production, the rainfall is suppose 600 for current year, then we need to make a prediction that how much is the likely rice production going to be. So now if my estimation of b is 0.04, then we will say that it is 600 multiplied by whatever is our estimation of b plus whatever is our estimation of c. Then we can say with confidence that if the meteorology department is saying that this year the rainfall is likely to be 600 mm, then we can make a prediction and say that the most likely figure for rice production is 94 million tons. Okay, then the concerned department will say that okay, the last year the production was 101, this year the production is 94, and therefore we are likely to have a 7 million tons shortfall in the production. Is it going to affect our different aspects of economy? And it will help the planners. Now, So we have made some estimation, but how do we know that this estimation is good or bad? So if you plot this, if you make a plot of rainfall, so my x-axis, the values of a x I am plotting on the x-axis, which is the amount of rainfall, and the actual rice production we are plotting on the y-axis, and this is the kind of thing we get. So you can see that there is some variation, but there is a good relationship. Now if you see the y is equal to bx plus c, it becomes a equation for a straight line. A straight line will be denoted by yx plus c. Now here c is the constant, so it means that when x is 0, y would be 70. So let's try to just plot it manually on the graph. So I'll go to edit chart. So since we are saying that the minimum value will anyway will be 70, I am putting it as 65. Take the minimum value as 65. So if I try to draw a graph of this one, it says that when x is equal to 0, my y would be 70, because x is 0, so this value b into x will become 0, and then y is equal to c. So if you try to draw a graph manually, this annotation is, yeah, it's here. So the graph will go something like this. Okay. So you could draw a graph like this, and then somebody could come and say that this is not really a good presentation. Anyway, you are seeing the output of this, and we are having a good amount of variation. Then we could say that does this line fit the data better? Somebody could draw a third line and say that not this one, but if we have our straight line like this, that is the better. So we have different options here. We could draw different lines. When we say draw different lines, it means that we can have different values for b and c, and each of these lines actually represents the different values of b and c in this equation. In the first case, the value of c is 70, which is here. In the second case, the value of c is around, say, 89. In third case, the value of c is around 92. And accordingly, the value of b, or the value of b, is how fast now it rises or falls with the data. So it means that 0.04 means that if there is 1% increase in the rainfall, there would be a 5% increase in the production. So now the question as a data scientist is that if these are the different estimations we are going to make, which one is the best estimation? Or we are saying that which line is the line of best fit? We call it the line of the best fit. It means that which one is giving me the best prediction, and these lines are nothing but this equation. So each of these lines represents a different equation, or different values of b and different values of c. We need to assess that which one is the best one, and that's where we are saying that let's find out how do we measure that which one is the best. So on the similar lines as we had done in the case of finding the variance, here also we will calculate some measures. Now if you have, say, these lines, we can measure as to how much is the difference between my prediction and the actual number. That is what will tell us that how accurate my prediction is, because if the my prediction is the same as the actual, then we are making a very good prediction. If my prediction is far away from the actual, then we are making a bad prediction, and that is what we measure as error. So error is the difference between our predicted value and the actual value. So if my prediction was 91.72 but my actual prediction was 95, my error is minus 3.28. So the first measure, which is the simplest one but the most important one, is that how accurate my prediction is, and that we measure by finding out the difference between what my prediction is and what the actual value was. That is what we show as error. Now again, taking the same principle that the errors could be positive or negative. So for example, if we take this line, this distance is actually the error. So this is my prediction, because this line is my prediction line and this is the actual value. So this difference is my error. Similarly, for when the rainfall is say around 500, this is my error, and then at some point the error is lower, and then the error moves in the other direction. It means that at some point at when the rainfall is higher, actually my prediction becomes higher than the actual number. So these lines that we are drawing is actually the errors. That is what you are seeing in the PPT. That line was moving. So these were the different lines that is being drawn, and based on that you are finding out the difference or the error between your prediction and the actual number. That is what is being shown in this column. So we take the error, and then to ensure that the errors don't cancel out each other, we take the square of that, and that becomes the square of the error. Now on a very similar line that we had taken when we were computing the variance and the covariance, we sum these errors. That's called the sum of square of errors, or SSE. Then we sum it, and then we take the average of it or the mean of it. Again, the same principle, we divide that by n or n minus 1, depending upon whether we are dealing with the population data or sample data. When we're talking about the population data, it means that whatever we are trying to study, I have information about each and every data element, and sample is that I have data only of a subset of that particular data. So for example, the rice production has been going on for hundreds and thousands of years. I am taking only 10 years data, because maybe for rainfall and rice production, I will have say data available for past 100 years, but I am taking data only for 10 years. So that 10 years becomes my sample. So since we are taking a sample here, we will divide this by n minus 1. And since we had squared these errors earlier, now we take the square root of that. So these are the terms that you will come across, which is on a very similar line, or conceptually is very similar compared to the computation of the standard deviation and the variance. So in the case of the computation of the standard deviation and variance, we were taking a difference between the mean of the data set, and we were finding out the difference between the mean and the data element. Then we were squaring it. In this case, we are finding the difference between the prediction and the actual number, and then we are taking a square of the error. Okay. So first we compute the SSE, or sum of a square of error. Then we compute the MSE, which is called the mean square error. And then we take the square root, and that is called the RMSE. So RMSE is a very good measure of our accuracy of prediction. So lower the RMSE, lower the deviation. Okay. So, and then there is another very important measure with which we actually started our discussion. It is the R squared, because R squared is used in our VIF calculation. So we'll come to that. Now there is another measure which we call as R squared, which is saying that how much of this how much is the variation in the actual value. So if you see, there is the dependent variable is also going on changing. It means there is some variation in the dependent variable. So how much of that variation is actually explained by my estimation? Okay. So it means that there is some variation in the rice production itself. So we'll compute the variance. And how do we compute the variance? By finding out the difference from the mean. So I'll take the mean here. So if you see, the formula is that I am taking the average of this column C. Column C difference from the mean squared. So C is my prediction. Now here actually it should be B. And this should be the average of B. It means that we are trying to first compute so we are saying how much is the variation. The total variation is the simple variance that we have computed earlier, and the variance was that we find out the average. So here you can also write the formula here. The average of the actual values that we have got, and then we find out the difference of the average and the actual value. So this computation of the variance we have done earlier. So now we say the total variance is, say, 146, which is also called the total sum squared, or TSS, when we come to regression. And then we say that if the total variance is this, how much of this variance is explained by my prediction? And that number is obtained by dividing the sum of the squared by the total variance, and then 1 minus that number. So let's see this. So the R square number actually is another measure which says that whatever is the total variation in Y, because the Y also is not constant, it is going on changing. So there is some variation in Y. Now, how much of that variation is actually explained by my prediction is another measure of how accurate my regression is, or how accurate my prediction is. So these are the two very important measures that we will understand today, which is called the RMSE, or the root mean square error, which is nothing but we take the difference between my prediction and the actual value. We take a square of that to cancel out the implication of the plus and minus variation. Then we sum that, we divide that by number of observations we have. So I get the average error, which is called the mean square error. And the terms themselves are more or less explanatory. So we first find out the error. So if you see here, we first find out the error. Error is nothing but the difference between my prediction and the actual value. Then we take the square of the error, and then we take the sum. So this is the sum of the square of errors. But we want to find out what is the average error. So we divide that by the number of observations we have. And then we find the mean square error. But now we need to take a square root because we had squared these errors, and that becomes my RMSE, which is a very important measure of how much is the deviation. Okay. So now let's see what happens. Now we have a measure of computing how good or bad, or at least we can compare the two different estimation. So with 0.04 and 70 as the values for B and C, we are getting an RMSE of 4.37. Suppose I make it 0.2 just to. Now at 0.2, my RMSE score has gone up to 101. It means that my previous estimation was actually much better. Now, if I reduce it to 0.02 from 0.04, right now my RMSE is 4.37. Now it becomes 16. It means that now my previous estimation was still better. So I go back here. Then maybe I can tinker with C also and say that what if I put this number as 75? And as I put this number as 75, the RMSE actually comes down to 2.87, which is actually looking like a very good estimation, because if the RMSE is 0, it means that I have been able to make the accurate prediction all the time. So this is what the process would be, and similarly we find the value of the R squared also. So we are first finding out these differences here, then we take the square. So that's the process we'll follow. Now if you come back to this, this is what was being shown here. Let me remove these annotations. This is what this graphic is trying to show you, that you can experiment with different lines, that which one is giving you the most accurate prediction. And when we say most accurate prediction, it means that we are trying to reduce the RMSE and we are trying to get the most appropriate value for R squared. So if the R squared is 1, it means that there is a perfect correlation. Okay. Now, even in Excel, we have a way to find out that what is the line of the best fit. So first we will experiment with that one. And we can go to series and we can draw a trend line here. So you see the system draws a trend line, and that's the line of the best fit. And here we can also say show R square, and we can ask it to show the equation also. So we say use equation. Now, just to have a better visibility now that we know that it is all above 90, let's also fix the vertical axis. I'll set the lowest value as say 85. Okay. So if you see on the top in Excel also, I have got what is called the line of the best fit. So the value of the X, if you see, it is showing here. X is multiplied by 0.0264, which is the value of the B, plus 81.7, which is the value of the C. And with this, you get the R square of 0.889. Let's see here. So if I replace these values by 0.0264 and we replace this value by 81.7, you see that R square we are getting as 0.89, and this is the best estimation that you can make. Okay. Now the question is that in the Excel is giving me that best estimation, but how do we really do it in using our Python libraries or using our machine learning libraries, because these, what you are seeing here is very, very simple. The question that you may ask, that why do we need to do those? Because Excel can always give us, or the Google Sheet can always give us these number. Why do we want to try out all these things that we were doing earlier? But the problem is that the kind of data that we will deal with, or the size of data that we will deal with, it is not really possible to have in Excel or Google Sheet, because um, you might be dealing with multiples of tens of thousands of records, then not just one variable, but also maybe tens or even hundreds or thousands of different variables. It means that X will not be just one, it can be X1 to X100 or X1 to X1000. In some cases, it can be X1 to X10,000. It means that you would be dealing with maybe tens of thousands of the independent variable. So that is where those machine learning libraries, they become very powerful in making these estimation. But we need to understand the fundamentals with some smaller data sets. So two measures that we talked about, RMSE and the R squared. Now let's try to understand again that in this case, the independent variable is the rainfall, dependent variable is rice production. Then we are trying to make the prediction, we are trying to arrive at a formula or an equation which will give me the prediction of how much is the rice produced, or the value of the amount of the rice produced. That is my prediction variable. So we want to find out the rice production based on the data which I have available of the rainfall. Then we find that we make various estimations, and the accuracy, or how good my prediction is, I measure that on two different parameters. One is called the RMSE, which I suppose that you have understood now intuitively based on our discussions earlier on how do we compute the variance. And the idea is very simple. So even if you close your eyes and say that how do I measure my accuracy of my prediction, it is that I will compare my prediction with the actual data. Whatever is the difference, that's the error. That error, I'll take a square. And why do I take a square? Because some errors would be on the positive side, some errors would be on the negative side. Sometimes my prediction would be more than actual, sometimes my prediction would be less than actual. And therefore, I run a risk of cancelling it out. And therefore, I take the square of it. And I sum these squares and divide that by number of observations which we have. So that gives me the average error I have. And so that will call the mean square error, or the MSE. That's the average error I have in my estimation. But since I had squared these errors, I need to take a square root of that. So I take the square root of that, and that measure would be called RMSE. So now, even closing your eyes without having anything in front of your computer, or anything on the computer in front of you, you should be able to explain that what is RMSE is, because that looks very logical. The name itself combines all these steps. RMSE, E is for error. Now we understand what the error is. So this is the error in the estimation. Then square. So RMSE, the second word is square. So we take the square of the error, then we take the mean of that, and then we take the root of that. So RMSE, these are the four different steps that you do. The name itself contains the entire explanation. And that is what you should be able to explain to anyone, that why RMSE is a good measure of the quality of my prediction, the accuracy of my prediction. Another measure then is that, okay, the lower the RMSE, better is my prediction. Higher the RMSE, worse is my prediction. Now the R squared tells you that there is certain variation in the value of Y, or the prediction variable, whatever we are trying to estimate, that itself has certain variation, or the variance. That variance we compute, which is for this for the values of y, I can compute the variance. The variance computation you have done earlier. And the variance computation is nothing but we take the difference from the mean, and then we take the square of that, we sum that, and then we divide that by number of, if you want to find out the mean, then we divide that by number of observations. In this case, we find the total variation, and then we are trying to find out that how much of the variation is actually explained by my estimator. And this estimator is nothing but the value of the b and the value of the c, or the equation y is equal to bx plus c is my estimator. So if you see here, the total variance is 146.4. What is now the square of error? So since this is an error, we see that this is the error which still exists. It means that I have not been able to remove this part of the error. So if you divide this 16.23 by 146, that shows that how much of the error has not been explained, because that still remains as error. And 1 minus that value becomes the R square. It means, so if we divide, if we take 1 minus this value, it means that shows that how much of the error has been explained by my equation or my regression equation. So the interpretation of the R squared is that I have certain variation in my value of y. How much of that I have been able to capture? How much of that variation I have been able to capture through my estimator? That is what the R squared is. So if we are able to capture the entire variation, it means that my prediction is very good. Whatever is the variation, and that at that point of time, the R squared will become 1. So for example, if I just replace my prediction with the actual value, then there is no variation. It means that my prediction is very good. Whatever I am predicting, actually the value is the same. And in that case, you see that R squared becomes 1. So R squared value of 1 means that I have a perfect prediction. Whatever is the actual value, I am able to predict that. Okay. So, and the value which is close to 1, that shows that the prediction is better. It means that I am able to capture the entire variation with my prediction. And the farther it goes from 1, it will be, the prediction is bad. So I get back to it, and then we see that our prediction is with the best fit line. This is what the best we can achieve. Anything that you vary from here will actually increase the RMSE and decrease the R squared. So for example, this 81.7, even if I make as 80, and just notice these values, currently our RMSE is 1.34 and R squared is 0.89. What happened? RMSE increased and RMSE increased and the R squared decreased. Okay. So that means this is the line of the best fit. But how do we really find out? We can find out with some measure, and these two measures is what we will be using in regression. So is the basic concept of regression is clear to you, and more than how do we find out the regression, how do we find out the values of B and C, because those are the things which my algorithms will find out, which we will start experimenting, we'll start going into in a day or two. But what we need to evaluate more as a data scientist, so this job of finding the value of the B and C, the job of finding out the estimator, or the job of finding out this equation which will give me the prediction, that the algorithms would do. But as a data scientist, we will have to look into deeply as to how accurate my prediction is, which prediction do I go with, whether it is acceptable to me or not. And that's where the understanding of these two concepts becomes very important, which is the RMSE and the R squared. So is the concept of the root mean square of error and R squared, is that clear to all of you? Because this is very, very fundamental. This is the very basic things, or these are the very critical things that not basic. I would use the word critical. These are the very critical things for you to understand and to be able to explain that what is this RMSE and what is R squared. So, okay, good. So if you're clear with this, then we will use, then we'll go back to our maybe one of the last steps that we were doing in the data preparation part is removal of the data elements which are highly correlated. So what we do is that one measure is called the VIF, or the variance inflation factor. It means that I use some measure so that the variation is actually inflated. So I take R square. I would have explained it here. Yeah. If you see, the formula for VIF is 1 by 1 minus R square. Now we have seen that R square captures that how much of the variation we have been able to explain. So we take the value of the R square, then we deduct that from 1, and then we divide 1 by that number. So what it will show you, that the higher the value of R square, lower the denominator will become, and therefore higher the VIF will become, and that's why it's called the inflation factor. So just 1 minus 1 by 1 minus R square, that's the VIF. Now by finding the VIF, normally what the system would do, and let's go into the Python notebook. So it finds out the VIF. Higher the VIF, it means that higher the correlation. In the background, what the application is doing, it is running a regression between one column or one feature with all the other features. So in the housing data set, we'll see that in the housing data set. So in the housing data set, if I have, say, 10 different variables, it will choose one column, say latitude, and then it will run a regression as if latitude is Y and every other feature is X. Okay, then we'll get the value of the R square, and then from there we derive the value of VIF. So the rule of the thumb is that higher the VIF, higher is the correlation between that particular feature and other features. So now we come to the VIF. Before that, let me run the and the rule of the thumb is that if the VIF is actually less than 5, in that case, that particular feature is having a very low correlation with the other features. If it is between 5 and 10, then the correlation exists. They are correlated, but they are not highly correlated. And the value of anything more than 15 is supposed to be high degree of correlation. So what we will do now is that we'll find out the VIF, and then we will eliminate those columns which are having a VIF of more than 15 with other data elements. So some of these things have not run. I think here it used to give me a problem in the reading. We'll just define the housing one here. So we are just dropping the ocean proximity because that's a non-numeric data field that we have got. Okay, so here looks like that ocean proximity has been dropped. Okay. This one I had done here anyway. So I'll remove that cell. Now, let's see what we are doing here. Just understand the process. Don't go into the Python syntax as such. It's very easy to understand. What that we are doing here, we are defining a method. We are giving a name to the method, which is getVIF. So getVIF is the name of my method. And this method accepts two different parameters, which are df and the threshold. What do we do? Then from stat model library, we import the outlier.influence, and from there we get the variance inflation factor, which is the VIF. So we import the VIF class from this library, and then we are again just storing the, we are finding the number of columns. And this number of columns I can find out by the shape of the data frame that I get, and taking the, so this shape comes into two, shape has two different values. The first one is the number of rows, the second one is the number of columns. So if I give the index of 1, it will give me the number of columns, which is the second data element in the shape. So here, if you recall here, just let me type out here. Housing.shape. And then if we print here, you see here, we get two values. First one represents the number of rows, second one represents the number of columns. So the index value of this is 0, index value of this is 1. So if I say housing.shape 1, it should give me the number of columns. So let me suppress this one. These are the very basic information that now I am confident that you are able to derive by yourself. So if I say housing shape 1, it gives me the number of columns that we have. And if you say housing shape 0, it will just give me the number of rows. And if I don't give, then it will give me both. Okay. So what we're doing here is that first I am storing how many columns it has, because I will need to iterate over each column. So I'm storing the number of columns. Then I am defining a variable. MaxWidth is a variable where I am putting the threshold. This threshold is I'll put as what is the maximum width score I am willing to accept in my data set. As we mentioned that Anything which is say higher than 15 normally indicates that this particular column has a very high correlation with other columns, or with the other, this feature has a very high correlation with other features, and therefore we don't need to retain those features which are highly correlated, because it contaminates our values of prediction. That is what we are trying to do here. So we'll define a threshold. That threshold would be passed from my function call, and this would be my data set. Having done that, we run a while loop, and we say that while my threshold is less than the maximum value of WIF, in that case, compute the WIF and remove that column. That is what this code is doing. Okay, so actually what we are saying is that I'll pass you a threshold, I'll pass you the data set, then find out the WIF score. If the WIF score is more than the threshold, remove that column, and continue removing these columns until I have all the columns in my data set which is having a WIF score of less than my threshold. And that's why I run a while loop, where I say that maximum WIF, if it is, continue doing whatever commands we have given in the body of this while loop until the threshold is lower than the WIF. It means that if the threshold, if the value is higher than the threshold, remove it. Then we do the computation of it. We find the WIF by calling this function. So we compute the WIF score for each column, and then here we remove it. That is the DF.drop. So we will have time to go into details of this one, but first now define this. First, let's understand what we are trying to do, and then we'll go into details of the code as to what is actually being done. So what we are trying to do is, from the data set, compute the WIF score, find out which column has the highest correlation with others. If that correlation or that WIF score is more than the threshold which I give, remove that. We'll do that now. So until now you are familiar with how to call the function. So I call the function here, I give the parameters. So parameters here, we have to give the file name. So let me create the DF data frame also. We have created the housing one data frame. This DF data frame is a copy of the housing data, but for the ocean proximity. Ocean proximity field has been dropped because this analysis we cannot do on a string field. We need a numeric field, so we have dropped that. So we are calling this method. We are passing the DF data frame, and we are passing the threshold as 15. It means that wherever the WIF score is more than 15, we'll drop it. So let's do it. So you see here, it is giving you the input output here. So in the first iteration, it shows you the WIF of the features. 628, 565, and then other numbers. And then we are saying, it is saying that dropping longitude, which has a WIF of 628.97. Then it drops it. Then it runs the iteration once again. And then it says that now having dropped the longitude, now we are left with only the remaining features. It computes the WIF score once again. And then we see that the highest WIF score now comes for the total bedrooms. If you see in the earlier one, the value of the longitude and the latitude in this case are highly correlated. It need not always be the case, but these are really highly correlated because the data given to us is from a particular location, particular city, and therefore there would be high correlation between the longitude and latitude anyway. So it dropped one of them. Then it finds out the total bedroom has a very high WIF score. That is because the total bedroom has a very high correlation with the total rooms, the population, and so on. And therefore, it drops the total bedroom. Having dropped the total bedroom, it now finds that the household has a very high WIF score, so it drops the household. Then in the end, it says that now all WIF is below 15. So we are left with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 features, and 3 features have been dropped because they have a high correlation. So that is an programmatic way of dropping the elements which have a high correlation. Of course, we can do it manually also. We have seen. Now, if all these features you see, they would be having a very high correlation score. So let's go back to the correlation part and draw. So this must have been in the statistical analysis. We come to correlation. Okay. So here we were computing the correlation. And then we were, yeah. So if you see what were the fields dropped, it was longitude. If you see, longitude has a very high correlation, close to 1, with latitude. So that was dropped first. Then it dropped total rooms. So it dropped total rooms or total bedrooms, one of the two. Just let's see here. Next one, it dropped total bedrooms. So it dropped total bedrooms. If you see, total bedrooms has a very high correlation with total rooms, which is 0.93. Then it dropped household. Household has a very high correlation, 0.98 with total bedrooms, 0.92 with total rooms, 0.91 with population. And that's why household was dropped. These 3 were dropped. And then it says that now you can run with your estimation because the highly correlated items have been dropped. So the crux of the discussion today is that WIF is another important measure we need to understand. But in order to understand WIF, we also had to understand what is R square, because the formula of WIF is 1 by 1 minus R square. So that formula 1 by 1 minus R square, it actually inflates the variation factor. Then we understood the concept of R square. That is one of the key measures if we are making a prediction using regression. Regression is trying to find out an estimator for making a prediction of some variable or some data point. That is called the dependent variable, or that is also called the prediction variable. So we are trying to make a prediction about something based on certain other data points that we have. So in the case of the rainfall and rice, the prediction variable was rice production, and the dependent variable or the predictor variables was rainfall. In the case of housing prediction, we had 9-10 different data elements. But as one of the part of the data cleansing process, we had said that we need to find out which data elements or which columns or which features are highly correlated. We need to remove them because they contaminate my prediction. And WIF is one of the measures which tells us that which are the data elements which are highly correlated, and we can either remove these manually or we can remove that programmatically. And that's what we experimented with, writing one small program to find out the WIF score and then dropping that. Okay. So what we are doing here is that we are finding out the WIF score here for all the columns. Then we are dropping it here. So these two are the most important lines in this code. I'm not going to go through that code because you will gradually get the understanding of the code. And to get that understanding, you must do some of the exercises which are very interesting also to do, which I have shared with you. So especially the assignment 1 was a very simple one. You are just, we are testing there that whether you recall some of those syntax or not to find out different things. The second one is a bit more complex, but it's also very interesting because you are trying to derive certain values which will use the concept of the loops, which will use the concept of the exception handling, and also computing the concept of the prime number and so on. So I have given you the core of the wherever I thought that at this stage you will find no, you don't really need to spend the time in writing the entire code. So I have given you the shell of the code. So any of you have seen the assignment 2, even if you haven't solved it? And if you have been able to see the assignment 2 notebook, if one of you can confirm. Unable to open. I had shared the link now. Is that the problem? So you're not able to open assignment 1 or assignment 2? Assignment 2 you are not able to open. Okay, I'll share the link again. Just let me check if the just give me 1 minute. Assignment 2. I'll send you the Colab link also. So sharing part. Just let me check once the sharing settings. It is okay. So the sharing settings was anyone with the link is an editor. I think now you should be able to access with the same link. Anyway, I'm copying this link also here now. With this link, can one of you try to open? I have posted the link in the chat window. Can you try to open and confirm whether you are able to open at your end? Not opening still? Anyone else, like Bhanu or Rishabh, can you try?
Right now I'm using mobile.
Okay, but in the on the mobile also it should open.
I will try.
Okay, sure. Okay, so one question was that how did we find out the okay? So one question is that how did we find out the value of the B and C in Excel? So actually, I am using here what I have used is the Google Sheet, not Excel. So there could be certain differences in the command between Excel and Google Sheet, but anyway, Google Sheet is also freely available to you, so you can use that. So I'll show you the in Google Sheet. I'll just repeat that once again. So I'll remove this and just demonstrate this once again to you that how did I do it. Okay, and the process would be more or less the same in Excel, but there few things could be different. But in Google Sheet, I find Google Sheet actually to be very handy because it's all available on the cloud. It gets stored on the cloud. I don't need to have a local installation of anything, and it works actually very well. So I take these two columns, then insert chart until here. If I and then we go and choose the chart type. So chart style we will choose as scatter chart. So from setup, this one what is showing you is the column chart. We'll go to scatter chart. So we'll choose scatter. Okay. Now, having chosen scatter chart, all these dots you are able to see, it is showing here. Then I go to customize. Then in customize, now you would have an option of not the chart style. So chart style will go to series. And then under series, you will have an option of trend line. So once I click on trend line, then it actually shows the trend line. Okay, so it draws the trend line. And then for the trend line, it will ask you that do you want to show R square? So I'll click that. Then you see that the R square value has come here. Now for this trend line, it is also giving you the option under this header label. I can either say none, or I can say custom, or I can say use equation. So I'll say use equation, then the equation of this line will come. Now, one more to enhance the readability of the chart, one more thing you can do is to give the more space to the chart, you can go to vertical axis and then say minimum value. Minimum value visually we can see here it should be around 85. So it gives you a good coverage on the chart here. Maybe we can say here 85 also. 80, minimum you can actually go up to 89 and that will give you the larger space. That is all which I did. These are the steps if you are using Google Sheet. There would be similar steps in Excel also, because Google Sheet and Excel commands are almost in sync. There could be some minor difference here and there, but that's how you draw. So here on the top, we got the values of B and values of C and value of the R square. And we are able to match it here in our computation. Okay. Fine. Okay. Now that we have understood the concept of the R square, what the WIF is doing is that suppose I'll open my, yeah, we'll come back here. Now if you come here, let's first see the currently, if you see, this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 features we have got. Okay. Out of this, my predictor variable or the variable, the prediction variable or the Y would be my mean median house value, isn't it? This is what we are trying to predict. Rest of these, latitude, longitude, and remaining 7 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, remaining 8 of them are my predictor variables or are my features. So in machine learning, we'll call them features, and whatever we are trying to predict, we call that as labels. So Y would be called as label, and all the X values, X1, X2, X3, these are called the features. So we will use the term features or the predictor variable. We will come across the same things in different contexts. So what WIF is doing is that first it will take longitude and it will find out the R square, as if it is trying to predict the value of longitude by treating everything else that we have in my data set as X. So it will first treat longitude as Y, remaining as X, and then it will find out the R square. So R square we can find when we are using one variable or one X or multiple X. The demonstration I have given to you is with just one variable, but once you are running the regression with multiple variables, even then you will get an R square. So you will get an R square for longitude. And then you find out, you inflate that. And how do you inflate that? By taking 1 divided by 1 minus R square. So what happens if the R square is higher, then the denominator becomes smaller, and then the value of WIF becomes larger. So say if the R square is 0.99, then you will take 1 minus 0.99, so that will become 0.01. So it will become 1 by 0.01, the value will become 100. That's how it gets inflated. That's why it is called the inflation factor. So it will compute the WIF. So it will first compute the R square for each feature. Then it will compute the WIF of each feature. If the WIF is beyond the threshold, then I am dropping it. So having dropped longitude, it will again compute the same thing. Now it will compute the R square, but longitude is not in my data set now because longitude has been dropped. So longitude was getting a very high WIF because this one has a very high correlation with latitude to start with. Now that longitude is gone, latitude is not having any kind of correlation with the others. So latitude is showing a lower WIF. But then total rooms is showing a very high correlation, very high WIF score, because total rooms still has a very high correlation with the total bedrooms, population, and so on. So it drops the total bedrooms. Having dropped the total bedrooms, then it drops population. And after that, it says that in the remaining 6 features, we are not having any kind of, the correlation is not very high. So this WIF is nothing but 1 minus 1 divided by 1 minus r square, which is the inflated value derived from the r square. R. This part we have done. These are the equations also I have given you. Width part, I think we were discussing here. So yes. So the question is that r square and width is calculated for each column. Then which are not correlated are kept. Yes. So actually we are proceeding in the other direction. That is, we are dropping out the one which has a higher width, and therefore we end up retaining those which have a lower correlation with each other. That is how the width will operate. So if we come to our notebook once again, without going into all these details, if you see, first I am computing width here in this line. Then I find that which column has the highest or the maximum width, and then that column is dropped here. That is what is being done until everything is below the threshold. So I had defined a threshold of 15. In the first iteration, it computes the width. So these are the width score of the corresponding features we have. So first one is latitude, longitude in this order. Latitude, longitude, housing median age, total rooms, and so on. So first I drop the one which has the highest value. Then I compute the width scores again. And then we see that the total bedrooms has 92. We drop that. Then I compute the width again for the remaining elements. And then thus we end up retaining those which are not correlated. So your understanding is right, Rishabh? Yes. So we end up retaining those which are not correlated. Okay. Now we have gone through almost all the steps which is required for data cleansing. Now we are ready to enter into an area where we will start making prediction using the machine learning libraries. Okay. But at the same time, parallelly, certain other Python concepts which was not really necessary for handling the things that we are doing till now, but which will become necessary to understand as we go along. So we'll go into the concept of the classes, how to create a class. So we have understood function. I would urge you to understand how to create a function very well before we go into creating a class. So tomorrow we will spend some time on the Python concept of the classes. How do we create classes? How do we use classes? How do we invoke a function from the classes? We'll do that. And then we'll go to having understood now that what is the R square and what is the RMSE. That is how to measure that whether my prediction is good or bad. We'll also go into the concept of that once we start optimizing, then how do we really proceed with the optimization process? So that is called the gradient descent, which is also a very important concept in machine learning. So tomorrow we'll cover these two things, how to create the classes, how to invoke the classes, how to package the classes, and after that we'll go into what is called as the gradient descent. So that is another concept which we need to understand before we actually go into the prediction or the machine learning part. Okay. So if there is any question, my offer to spend time with you even outside these class hours is always open. Reach out to me one-on-one if you have any difficulty in understanding any concept in today's class or in the earlier classes. So until now, we have built the foundation. Now we are all set to step into different exciting things in machine learning. So maybe tomorrow we'll go into understanding the gradient descent and the formation of the classes. Maybe starting day after, or maybe if we have some more questions or some more things to cover. Otherwise, starting next week for sure, we are going into machine learning. Any questions for today? Yeah, I'm holding for the questions. Okay, so right now we are all the question is that we are using WIF on the housing data. Yes, this example that we have given to you is on the housing data, because if you see this DF I defined excluding the ocean proximity. So all the measures of statistics you can't run on a field which is non-numerical. So I have removed that ocean proximity and stored that data to DF, another data set called DF. Then I'm running the WIF on DF. So this is for demonstrating that how the WIF actually functions. Now, different things that we have talked about, removing the outlier or the correlation, filling the data, all these are different approaches. So my intent until now was to show you the different tools which are available for data cleansing with the example of the housing data set. Now, out of all these tools, whether we use one or all of them, or we use none of them, actually depends upon our own decision that whether we want to use these tools or not. And that is some of the decisions that we will have to make as data scientists. It doesn't mean that just because I have, say, 10 different sizes of hammers in my toolkit, I don't have to use all of them, isn't it? But I must know that what all I have in my toolkit. So until now, what we have done, I have introduced you to different types of tools that you have available. Whether to use that tool in a given context or not, that is a decision that we will have to take based on certain parameters. So as we go into the actual prediction part using machine learning, we will have the opportunity to experiment with. I mean, here, the good thing about the data science today is that you can experiment with different things. For example, you can see that using WIF, I dropped, say, 3 different columns. Then I can run the prediction with only 6 columns and see the result. I can see the R square, I can see the RMSE with only 6 columns. After using WIF and dropping the columns using WIF, I can also run the prediction by using all the 9 columns. It doesn't really take me any time. So we can experiment with different combinations and see that whether that particular tool is effective in that given context or not. So we have different tools. We can see the impact of the tools on the actual prediction when we come to the prediction going into machine learning. So until now, the idea was to give you the exposure to different tools, whether to use or not to use. We will decide based on either we can do a trial and error experiment, or we can take a considered call that yes, this looks logical and therefore I will do it. Okay, so those things we will start understanding much better, that which data cleansing tool or which data wrangling tool we are going to use in a given context, and from context to context. So for example, I have also given you the diabetes data set in assignment 1. So on that data set, I may use maybe 2 out of these different things that we have used. The other things may not be very effective there. When it comes to housing prediction, I may use something else. Okay, that's how we will start doing definitely starting sometime next week. Any other question? If not, then we will end the session today, and then we'll meet again tomorrow at 7. Thank you.